Thursday, March 22nd, 2018, Tiverton Budget Committee meeting. If we could do our Pledge Allegiance to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everyone. Roll call, Mr. Paul. Present. Mrs. Jocelyn. Present. Mrs. Janet.
Present.
Mike Dakota's present. Mr. McNally.
Present.
Mr. Edwards. Present. Mrs. Hollenbach.
Present.
Mr. Katz.
Present.
We're missing Mr. Cody, Ms. Roshley, and Mr. Leonard.
Okay, I'd like to make the offer if there's any public comment from the audience. There's an opportunity welcome also as we the public to speak after we address certain items. A little bit outdoor, I'd like to welcome and introduce the new town administrator, Jan Reitsma,
Reitsma, it doesn't really matter.
welcome.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
You too.
Okay, we could go, he warned us that he might not have stuff ready, or he might, but he does. The town tax assessor, Dave Robert, has an updated tax levy information for us.
Good evening. So what's being passed around is the updated tax levy worksheet that I've prepared. And again, although this is updated, we're still conducting our revaluation process. As many of you know, notices were mailed out today. So during this phase of informal hearings, when people have the opportunity to contact Vision Appraisal and discuss any issues that they may have with the new valuation, Vision Appraisal, they'll listen to the issues, and if they see anything that seems to need to be corrected, they'll make some corrections, and then we'll have another update. And that update could actually increase or decrease. So we just don't know exactly where we're at, but I had assumed on some of the preliminary numbers that they have provided a couple of weeks ago that the overall assessments were going to increase somewhere around 10–11%. So the sheet that I handed out was at 10%. We're now looking at probably a 14% increase of overall valuations. So that's reflected in this new levy worksheet update. We had been at $2,106,000. Now we're looking at a $2,181,000 number. And with that, in conjunction with an increase in motor vehicle taxes, we had projected $1,375,000. It now looks at that number is going to be $1,407,000. So combined, it's looking like we're probably going to have a new projected tax rate of $17.13. Again, the motor vehicle number, that's probably a pretty firm number. The tangible property assessments are pretty much locked in, so the only thing that's really going to be changing is still the real estate values. So that is just the update. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer. But again, probably another 2 weeks, I will have updated information and provide it to the committee.
Mm-hmm. And that updated information is likely to be a result of questions that taxpayers have about their valuation.
Correct.
Not likely to go up.
Not likely, but you just never know. What they'll end up doing is seeing if there's, if there's a particular neighborhood where it seems like the majority of residents are coming in because of this concern, There might be some adjustments on the land value. There might be some adjustments on some of the cost margin behind a particular style of home. So there's a whole bunch of different areas that they'll take a look at. And once they finish that hearing process, they'll provide me a new list. That hearing process is about 3 weeks long, so if they do any updates, we'll probably still have one further one after that one. And I believe you guys might be wrapped up by then.
Wait, any questions?
The updated motor vehicle, is that just something updated at the state level? Or?
What happens is when we get a motor vehicle listing from the state, we always have a certain number of vehicles that come through unpriced. So that 1.375 was the number before I priced out those vehicles. We had roughly 340 of them. Surprisingly, this year, there was a lot of high-end vehicles, so that really drove a lot of value. So that 1.3 was prior to me updating the values. This is the final number.
So it's an update in your office, not at the state level or anything like
Correct.
that?
Right. And that number has the phase-out number already built in as far as evaluation. So the schedule this year is that you are being assessed at 90% of the native book value. So that's already baked in there.
Okay. And are those the only changes on this sheet?
Yes. Yeah, the left side is basically just a copy of last year's certified tax levy, just for reference.
Did I understand you right the last time you were here? If somebody doesn't have their ducks in a row for an appeal, immediately, they have 90 days?
So if they get their notice now and they have some issues, they don't necessarily have all their ducks in a row, because this is kind of an informal process. So if they have a concern, they should contact Vision Appraisal and meet with them and discuss the assessment. Once that process finishes, Vision turns over the project to me. I certify basically the numbers that we've reviewed and we've agreed with. On an individual basis, if you then still feel like you haven't been satisfied through that process, once you get your tax bill, you have 90 days from July 1st to September 28th, that window, to appeal to me.
And are all the new evaluations actually on the website now?
Yes, they are.
I don't know if it really matters, but I think your budget and revenue numbers differ from the latest we have. At this point, this is all draft, but I think the committee should be aware.
Yeah, I may not have the latest update. This was based on last sheet, kind of compare apples to apples with my numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that for the committee to know, looking at the, in this newest sheet that was given, the municipal budget is up slightly. And we'll go through that as we start to look, but there's a few items. We know we have some differences. The clerk's office had some additions. There's a few other areas. Also, the revenue numbers that we received at our last meeting are higher than here. But the way these calculations take place are really what will help drive us to understand what the impact of a budget is.
And also, while you're kind of discussing that, I just want to make sure that you've been updated. The prorated tax amount that I had projected was $375. That's been adjusted down to $300,000.
Could you say that again, Dave?
On the revenue side, the prorated taxes, normally we estimate somewhere around 90, 100,000, something like that. But because of the casino and the Longplex coming online this year, we're estimating that I had prorated taxes estimated for this year at $375,000. That's being adjusted down to $300,000.
And just bear with me a second.
Yep, sure.
I wanted to.
I'm not sure where I found on that revenue sheet.
All right. So for everyone, what he was talking about on the we received the revenue estimates, right? The sheet was clocked in on the 15th. It's a 3-page document. And on the second page, if you go in the middle of the page, the account number is 4109, and it's prorated property tax, if I have this correct. And in the version that we're working from, that number currently says 375,000, and you're advising that that number has been revised down to 300,000, correct?
Dave, just out of curiosity, did you observe any general trends in the town? Like, did value shift to North Tiverton or away from North Tiverton or east, west?
No, it's kind of, percentages are across the board in different pockets. So different neighborhoods appreciate differently than others. Style of homes in different areas appreciate differently than others. So I wouldn't say that the north versus south is any different as far as ratios are concerned.
Okay.
They're pretty much flat across the board.
Not to my personal experience today, but.
And could you talk, so if we're looking at a total of 14% increase, that was from last year. So this is the valuation of property at December 31st, 2017 versus December 31st, 2016. Is that correct?
That's correct, but that value from December 31st, 2016 is based on market data from 2014, because we do our revaluations once every 3 years. So that number didn't truly reflect market value at that point in time.
It was the statistical, what did you call them,
Revaluations.
reevaluations that way. Now we go into full. Is there a sense of making up a number as that's increased up to the 2.181? As you explained last time you were here, there's existing properties that have appreciated. There's new residential and commercial properties that came on, and though they're commercial, there's the casino completed to date, as well as Longplex being sort of two of the biggest. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is there some sense in terms of looking at the increase of the 14%, how much of it is kind of into those categories?
It possibly could be. I haven't done that kind of breaking that out between growth of new construction versus just appreciation or values. When we do for my purposes, it doesn't matter. I'm just looking at new growth, new value, that's it. As far as what percentage is part of just a normal market appreciation versus new construction, it all goes into one bucket for me. So, but if anyone wants to have that type of information, I can kind of try to work that out, break it down.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's something that is a helpful and important thing. A lot of what people, as they're trying to assess what their tax bill is in relation to what they paid last year. And our tax rate is likely going to be lower with this much higher valuation right now. But if your house went up by 14%, that's a different calculation than if it goes up by 8%, 6%, whatever. So this total 14% of everything, it's likely to mean that your houses necessarily shouldn't go up that much. But I know you can't do. Everything's on averages. So.
Right. It's all on averages, and that is one part to remember. And that's sometimes a hesitancy to put out that number because everyone kind of fixates on the 14%. Especially the people who have a higher increase. But because it is an average, people might see a very possible 30% increase in their assessments, whereas others might only see a 10% increase.
So we have the 5th of April, so 3 weeks from now, we have will be done with our process. So the updates, you anticipate that there's a possibility that there would be something sometime next week or the following week?
For sure, the following week I might have some updated information, and then hopefully the following week I might have some final information. But this is going to be a tight schedule to kind of coincide with your April 5th date.
Okay, great. So we appreciate that. What we'll do, Mike has done it for this meeting, we'll do others, is that we'll keep this as an agenda item to have Mr. Robert come as a potential weigh-in terms of the new numbers.
Hi, Brendan. I'm sorry I was late. Justin, you asked about the fire detail. We are looking into it. I talked to Dave. We're not quite sure how the fire chief calculated that, but we are still looking into it, so I will get back to you. I just didn't want you to think I forgot.
Okay,
All right?
thank you.
So any other questions for Mr. Robert on the updated information on the total estimated real estate and tangible personal property, TPP, is that correct? TPP, all right. And it,
No, I just, as far as that 14, I know you said that people tend to get fixated on that 14. That 14% came from Vision as of today? Or is that
I had a discussion with them probably end of last week on what the numbers.
But that
I'll send it to
14%,
you.
is that a number you look at, or is that a number that they give to you?
They give to me.
Okay, because touching a little bit on Justin's thing there, you had mentioned different areas of town. I can tell you right now, based on something I saw earlier today and kind of followed, the north end got hammered.
25%.
I got a 48%. And a lot of people got increases that, even if you started to look at comps, there's no comps. I mean, I'm looking at a $200,000 house that's better than mine, but I'm 248. So this is likely to change.
That's kind of what I wanted to ask you. When vision appraisal comes in, do they look at recently sold properties in your particular neighborhoods?
They do.
Because like when we looked at it, like there's not even a house that's sold in our neighborhood for $250,000 in the last year.
Right. So
220s maybe.
when we do a mass revaluation, what they take a look at is all the sales that's taken place in the past year and a half. And then they start building models based upon those sales. And then they'll extrapolate your market value based on your neighborhood, land pricing, style of home. So I do know for people who own ranch homes, there's a significant increase for those properties,
For single levels.
single levels.
Why is that?
Yeah. And then that's
As
just,
people age, they're
Oh,
buying
I
single
see.
levels and multi-levels aren't selling as much. And I know that from our neighborhood, the single levels have sold way faster than the multi-levels. And they're, as people retire and downsize.
right. So
That's
it's
been a
just,
kind of trend.
you know, the market forces are dictating that those single-level homes have increased in value. Now, what happens when you look at a individual assessment, so if you contact Vision Appraisal, when you go on in with your individual, they're not gonna show you this model that's kind of behind the scenes. They'll take a look at sales of comparable homes. It might not be in your immediate neighborhood, but it's gonna be fairly similar to your property. So they do have a database, I believe, of somewhere around 180 sales.
Thank you.
Dave, is there a spreadsheet available anywhere that has, say, every percentage increase in town?
No, I could provide one to you.
Yeah, I'd love that. Thanks.
Dave, thanks for the presentation. My question would be, if lots of people came forward to Vision, which I think is probably going to happen, to make appointments, how much of that can go down? How much of that can affect the final number? Let's say 1,000 people want to talk to Vision. How does Vision look at that? Do they know there's a certain amount they can tinker with up or down?
No, it really varies from project to project. In this particular case, that 2.181 number, there's probably not going to be tons of movement from that.
So even if 1,000 people come forward, it's probably not a lot that can be done
The
overall.
unfortunate thing is, you know, when people take a look at it, I mean, I've had several calls in my office today, there's a sticker shock involved, and, you know, people saying my house is not worth that. They don't know because they don't really know what's going on in the market, and one particularly was adamant that the market's gone down over the last several years, and the fact of the matter is, across the board in the state of Rhode Island, for the last 2 years, market value, I think, is 15%. So, you know, the market is appreciating, and again, the single-level homes have a much greater appreciation rate than, say, a Cape or a Colonial. So it's just the market forces.
A lot of realtors are gonna be happy with this news. They're gonna be coming to Tiverton.
Right. So even if, you know, we might be off on some data, like, you know, if there's simple data mistakes, I'm just like, they only have one bathroom versus 2 bathrooms. Those are small changes in an assessment. To make any type of really huge wholesale adjustments, they would have to have blown something really big. And when we do mass appraisals, we take a look at, you know, a lot of statistical analysis, and there's certain standards that we follow as far as what's acceptable, as far as ratio standards and studies and such. And the numbers that they presented to me right now, we're really tight as far as what sale prices are versus what their new preliminary assessments are. The sales ratio is, you know, 97, 98%. So it's.
So one thing that's happened over probably the last 10 or 15 years, and I did it myself because I came from Middletown. I couldn't afford to live on that island, so to speak, and I came here. And I'm always wondering if we just always undervalued our property here, and now it's starting to catch up with our neighbors. So you look at Westport, Bristol, and Portsmouth, right? Those aren't cheap communities to buy property, but yet for some reason Tiverton always was. So I'm just wondering if there was your opinion, if we were just undervaluing what we already had, and now we're kind of catching up to maybe where we should have been.
Not necessarily. The thing that you have to keep in mind is when you take a look at different communities and what their valuation is versus tax rates and ultimately the tax, that's a snapshot in time, and it really depends on when that community may have done their revaluation. So if you're taking a look at Middletown versus Tiverton or Bristol or Warren, they may be on a different schedule from updating their values. So if, say at that particular time, Middletown had done a recent revaluation versus Tiverton, we would have been at a lower percentage of market value than they would have been.
Thank you.
Does condition also come into
It
play?
does.
So when they did this, this wasn't one where they came and knocked on the door and asked to own the house. So how do
Right.
they assess the condition of your land, the condition of your house?
They don't change any of that data. So when they do the full revaluation door to door, that's when they can do the eyes on and make any type of judgment change as far as quality construction, condition of home and such. During these updates, it's just doing an analysis of sales. So they don't go out in the field and take a look at these properties. And that's just unfortunately the nature of the beast, that they go out and update with individual data collectors. They do have a field reviewer who will drive by every single property just to make sure the data seems reasonable. But you know, if they're not getting inside and it's an interior issue, they won't know unless you address it with a vision.
Okay, thanks very much. We'll look
Thanks,
forward
Dave.
to seeing you in the
Thank you.
next week or two.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
So on the agenda, what we did is, item number 3 was to give the committee an opportunity to ask any questions before we head in. We'll certainly have at other meetings the opportunity if people want to ask. But what I'd like to do is, I think these documents, especially for the newer folks that came to a head for me, the one that Dave just gave us is a critical one, right? It's all the numbers that we vote on, that will help calculate what we're going to end up with a tax rate in the end. We have, that was clocked in, it's a stamp the revenue one that I just mentioned to you. It was presented to us, I believe, last week. It has a stamp date of March 15th for the revenue. And so that sheet will be continuing to work off of this. And it looks to me the only big change that would be in here was the one that we just heard from Mr. Robert, is on that second page, is looking at the prorated tax. And in the printed document, we had 375, but that's been adjusted down to 300,000. Right. And as far as we know, are there any other changes to the projected revenues?
change that. We can't change what I submitted to you.
Yeah.
That had a council vote. They don't get back, they don't get a second chance. That's it. But you can make the adjustment as, you know, Mr. Robert discussed. He's lowering that. That's up to you to make it on your end. But we cannot submit any more documents to you on revenue or expense. Because the final vote had to be taken for a charter, and that's why you've got those clocked in copies.
Excellent. So with that, I guess it would be asking the town council, is there any new information that we should know, say from last week of looking at this, is to say, even though we can't submit a new document to you, we've learned this or that in regard to revenue?
No, not that I'm aware of right now.
Okay. Were there any questions, actually, if we could take that, in terms of the revenue document that we didn't hit prior?
I just was wondering if there's an update on the question I asked last week about the renovation aid, because there was a big discrepancy in what Mr. Rarick had said that we should expect that and what is on this document.
Yes, and I believe Denise Surratt said she emailed that information out. She
Yeah.
sent it to you?
She sent it to me, but I didn't print that out.
Okay. But it had to do with the debt service, correct?
I think she had a couple of items, yeah. I'll have to get that to the committee.
She said she mailed it out.
Okay, then moving forward on the docket, we call it the spreadsheet that has 13 pages on it. This one in the top right is dated March the 7th, but it has a stamped document on it that is also March the 7th. That was, I know that it was one that when the document is the correct one, and Nancy just made sure I had the front page to show that it was in. And just for everyone, in terms of the items that are different in this printed document were the things that I had mentioned early on. I believe it's on on page 2, as we look down, the town clerk's budget, which is count number 1010. And there were a few adjustments that we received last week in time.
You're looking at the general fund.
It's under general government, 1010, it's on the bottom of page 2, right? Yep. And if we're kind of working on what the town council or the elected bodies are, that number for the town clerk's office on the printed document said 254,955, right? And that should be, the total should be 255,855. So those were sheets that were handed out last week by Mrs. Mello that gave us the detail. And the differences to have everyone understand it. The photocopier maintenance line item went up to $4,500 from $4,000, and the supplies went from $8,600 to $9,000. And these might seem trivial, but when we're trying to tie all these numbers out, this is going to end up being pretty important. The other change that I know of would be is on the next page, on page 3. It's the Board of Canvassers, and it's account number 1030. And again, that was last week at our meeting. And the differences on the printed page that you have under the line items, we had elections under the restricted, that's 6329 is the account specific sub-count number. It was $40,000, and that number was revised to $45,000. Okay. And so it brings the total for that, the Board of Canvassers, to $53,100. And if I have it right, I believe that those were the only 2 changes on this document. Does anyone have any other ones that? So I guess what I would ask is the same question, is knowing that this document can't officially change, are there any information updates from either the town council or the new town administrator to say, we have different thinking on things since we submitted this last week?
Just for clarity, how does it work? Because the clerk and the treasurer are separate, so the updates for the clerk's budget should change on any working documents we have before we vote on them. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, say that again, Justin?
So we can't change the revenue, but we can't change what the town council's revenue ask was, but we can adjust, say, Dave Roberts' estimate down to $300,000 in our budget. It's just a clerical thing, pretty much. The town council gave us a full budget, but technically the clerk and the treasurer control their own budgets.
Right.
So if there is an abstract budget as it is right now, I think it would include the clerk's changes, even though the town council approved a budget that didn't reflect them. Is that?
I'm not sure what their question is. I guess it seems to me this is a working document that's a collaboration between the town council and the elected bodies.
Right.
And that for us, just to have one document to work from, that's what I'm trying to clarify where we are right now in those two adjustments.
Right.
It's actually the three. The revenue would be the third one.
Right, but I don't know if it has a practical distinction, but the numbers from the clerk are the official numbers, whereas the numbers from Dave Robert just now aren't official per se, because no elected body has voted on them. So I don't know if that makes a difference, but we're, drawing a distinction.
Okay.
For wonky people.
Fair enough. Great. Does anyone have, any questions to date? So I guess, bearing that there's ones that I think I have answers in my inbox from the treasurer that was asked about the debt service for the school, and I'll get that around to the answers to the committee. I apologize for that. Any other questions that might have that either the town council or the administrator or the clerk who's here regarding expenses?
The air bottles for the fire department, I know you said we were taking some out of this year's 17-18 budget, right?
Have I given you an update on the air bottles?
A few weeks ago, I think you did.
All right, so when the fire chief came to you, he said they were 10-year bottles, they expire after 10 years.
We got 15 out of those.
Well, with much investigation by several of us, they're 15-year bottles. So they're actually not expiring when he said they were. So we took $35,000 out of this year's budget, the one that we're working on, and we're buying air bottles. The air bottles are not $1,000. We got them for $880. So we were able to buy more than we anticipated. So the air bottles on here is correct, and we should be almost caught up this year. We will have some to buy the following budget, which is smart, so that they all don't come up the same year as they have. But I just want everybody to rest assured we are not working with expired air bottles. Every single air bottle that we have, I think it's 90-some, are actually in working order, and we will start replacing them as necessary. Okay?
So, in your
Well, it sounds
investigation.
like a lot of them are going to become necessary at the same time again.
They will, but there's no really way to avoid this at this point. Well, because they're expiring this year, so we have to get the amount there. We have talked about it, and whoever, and not insisted, but suggested that we stop looking at this and making sure that we do buy some before we have to buy them all in a lump sum. And even if we have extra, that's okay at that point, because then they're going to be expiring. When you buy an air pack, you get an air bottle. So some of our air packs will be needed to be bought between now and those bottles expiring. So we will be replacing bottles as we go along.
So, just to revisit the numbers there, how many total air bottles?
I knew you were gonna ask me that, and I got no sleep last night, so I'll try to remember this, and Nancy can help me.
It doesn't have to be exact, I'm just trying to get some sense.
It's 3 air bottles, it's 3 air it's 1 air bottle for every man, so that's 31. No, it's coming to mind 90-something. It's, I think it's 93, but I don't want to be quoted, it's somewhere in that area. It's 1 air bottle for every man and 2 extra. And so it comes out to 90-some air bottles. I have a list, if you'd like to see it, of all the air bottles we have and the expiration dates, and I can get that to you if you like.
Well, I'm just looking for rough, no, so.
So if we buy 35 now, and I think what's in this budget now, somewhere near 35, we'll have 70. Now,
So the 10 versus 15 years?
some of these air bottles, we looked into the manufacturers, and some of these air bottles were expire after 10, and so after 15. So I got kind of curious, because I found out that they inspect these bottles every 5 years. So if they inspected these bottles 10 years, if they inspected these bottles 3 years ago, they would have gotten rid of them. The people who inspect them take them away if they notice the expiration. So that's why I was curious on why they were still kept there. So then we did some research and found out some of these bottles, you can buy a 15-year expiration dates. So we assumed that's what it was. The fire chief did apologize and say that after careful research, it was 15 years. As far as the $1,000 versus the $880, I found out that in I think it's in May, there's a convention of all the fire chiefs, and all these manufacturers are there, and these manufacturers have these air bottles, and usually at a reduced price. The fire chief looked into it, and there's 2 companies that sell these air bottles, and there is indeed a company that sells them for around $800 to $900. So we got ours for $880 this year.
And roughly, do we know how many were the 15-year versus the 10-year?
They were all 15.
So
Every single one were 15. So
how many are actually expiring?
they're all expiring this year and not 3 or 5 years ago. It was kind of expressed that our firemen were going into fires with expired air bottles. First of all, that can't happen. People come in and inspect these every 5 years. So I found out that could never happen. So they're 15-year bottles.
So
There's
we
also
buy extra time, but we're not behind.
We're not behind. And I did find out also that Swansea has a fire truck that if we call mutual aid, and we usually do with Swansea if it's a big fire, they have the ability to fill bottles right there on site. So if a guy comes out with an empty bottle, we can fill it as he goes in with his new bottle. So it should be very safe. Any other questions?
Well, just a suggestion.
Yes.
Well, you alluded to the fact that you have a list, and
I do have a list, and
does the fire chief have a list?
Well, it came from him. I asked if I could
The
have.
reason I say that is, this never should have happened.
Well, I asked
Never
him.
have gotten to this point. However, we did. We have the new town administrator.
Yes, and he
here.
knows
I'm
all
sure
about it.
I'm sure he's getting an earful about it.
No, we. no,
However,
and
instead of, sure, you can front load them and buy extras now, or you could start replacing them a little 2 years earlier than you wanted to.
exactly, and that's
You know,
what I
when you
was
get to
saying.
13, you get rid of them and start buying. That way, you'd only have to buy maybe 6.
Yeah, and at some point, then we'd get on a nice schedule where we're only buying 10 or 15 a year.
If
Yes.
that
Right, and that's what we've talked about. The list was given to. I had asked for a list at my last or the meeting before that. I had asked for a list, and that's when I noticed the most. If it was on the 10-year bottles, all these bottles are definitely expired. And then I found out. I called other fire departments, and Trish called others, and we found out that the minute they see that they're expired, they put them in the truck, and you cannot use them anymore. There's these people that come and inspect them. So they couldn't have been 10-year, and then we found out they weren't. So at least I want everybody to be assured that our firemen are safe right now if there's a big fire going in with fire bottles.
The other side of this coin
Oh, you're done.
is the filling stations.
Right.
They're also a problem, right?
We have one filling station.
Only one?
At what, well, this is what I'm being told. There's one filling station, it used to be at the Crandall Road now. Recently, there's been someone said to me they thought it's in the north end. I don't know that answer. That was my next question. What I understand is we have one filling station, unless you know more than I do, and that could be.
No, I didn't know how many we had.
We have
I know
one.
there was a capital request to do something with the.
Yeah, I think it was to, yes, you're right, but I don't remember.
So.
Yeah, but no, we
I
do
don't
have
know-
one.
I don't know who takes care of it. I don't know how it's taken care
It would be
of.
the fire chief.
It might be advisable to look into having that part of the maintenance budget and having an outside whoever that maintains this kind of stuff,
Well-
maintain this thing.
We used to have someone in town come and look at that. I remember that from 6 years ago. I'm not sure. I do know that that company no longer exists, so I'm not quite sure who does it now. Debbie?
What's the difference? They're checking just for expiration, they're not checking for fill.
No, just expiration.
Just
They're
expiration.
just checking
Yeah, I guess
expiration,
this
so who-
company comes in and they look at the integrity of the bottle, and they look at the expiration date. David could probably answer this very much better than me, because he's a fireman.
The company that comes in, they hydro test them. So they test them with water under pressure.
The
And if they-
integrity of the bond
Yeah, and that's what she
itself.
is talking about, that every 5 years.
5 years, they're saying.
So as far as the integrity goes there, that's how they test them.
But they do also check the expiration date, I'm being told, too.
The personnel, I'm assuming it's the same in every department, although we use the word assume in this town. Every department, every shift, those air packs are checked as far as they're filled, they make sure they're filled, they make sure that their pass alarm works and all that stuff. So every department, every shift. So for us.
Yeah, because these air packs are kept in the engine for the amount of men that are in the engine, so when they start their duty, they go and make sure all their equipment's there.
They're never going out with empty bonds.
No, oh, no. Let's hope not, anyway. I would assume not.
But I think that in sum, it's that in this current fiscal year, FY '18, there's the plan to replace 35, is that correct? And then the request to us that's in the budget is, would allow for FY '19 to purchase another 35, so that we've got 70 that we would have, that would be new and
Yes.
have the 15-year.
Well, the number here is 25.5.
Yeah, so
So it would be 29 bottles, yeah, somewhere, and that's fine. It'll all work out. We have talked to the fire chief, and it will all work out. And like I said, there is a truck that almost always comes to our big fires, and I hear that they're the first ones called, and they can refill these bottles, so, at all times. And I've also learned that you can only go into a fire after using 3 air bottles, you can no longer go into the fire. Is that true, Dave?
Yeah, it just depends on the conditions and stuff too, but by rule, they shouldn't be going in more than 3 times.
Okay,
By the first time, their blood pressure's already through the roof.
yeah. So I've learned that too, so I could be a fireman, I think, right now, if I wanted to be. Any,
I have a more broad question, and I know, and I appreciate the town council went through a lengthy process to come up with the budget and to try to balance competing needs and thinking about adding this year is unique that we now have the principal for the school bonds. So that's a big addition in terms of what we have to cover in terms of the budget, the expenses that we have this year. Is whether thinking about priorities, money rains down from the sky, of where the town council would help advise us. We can make our own decisions, and that's why we got elected to do this. But I'm struggling with looking at department requests that came through that were different from what the town council ended up approving. And I'm thinking about a couple of plows that were needed from Public Works, that there's emergency vehicles from the fire department were capital expenses. And I'm sure that there are operating ones. So I'm not sure how easy or probably very hard this question is, but as we set up and we start to head into this, and again, it's up to us to make these decisions for the committee members here, but as the people who are managing the town day to day, is where you are looking at saying, what got left off the table in terms of priorities, here's what we would think, that it would be some capital expenses that we really think should be addressed first, or they could be in an operating budget.
Well, the best way to answer this is this budget represents the town council. This reflects our priorities. We talked to each department head, and like you said, every department head needs something, but we had to look at who needed it the most, and that's what we did. And this reflects what I think I can speak for the council to say that what's in this budget right now reflects what we think the priority is. And we work with this day to day. And some of us have been doing this quite some time. And I would love to give everyone everything they need, and I'm not saying they don't need it, but you have to look at who needs it the most. And the percentage increase that we're comfortable with is reflected in this budget.
And also along those lines, the heads of the department always push for as much as they can to be proactive. So they have said that themselves, that they wouldn't be doing their job if they didn't push for what they really need. So they don't always have to have everything, you know, even if they're pushing for it. So they made more decisions.
I mean, I think I explained as far as capital, our plows are falling apart. I actually have pictures on my phone where they sent me on snowy nights where you could see the snow on the pavement at their feet. So, and that was one of our biggest priorities, was to make sure that our drivers were safe and that our streets get plowed. And that was one of our major priorities this year. We have replaced other vehicles as we've gone along, and we felt that we needed to concentrate on the DPW. For some reason, Bill Anderson's budget the last 2 years, we've given him the less, and I think it's showing that up now. And that's why we did it that way.
So Denise, that's a perfect segue. I only have one question. We visited the DPW, but that was back in January, I believe. So now that we're at the end, hopefully, of the snow season, do we have a better idea of what the DPW needed? The one thing I had my eye on was the sand, salt, and gravel line item.
Every single thing that we've given the DPW, Bill has looked at. We asked him to go back and analyze. He knew that we were willing to make him a priority this year. And he's been very respectful of knowing what the others need and hasn't asked for an elaborate amount of things. Every one of these trucks, Bill has agreed that this is his priority, explained to us in detail why, and he has a plan for what he's going to buy next year and the following year. So if it's here, it's because Bill has said that this is what he needs, and he does have a plan. He does know what is going to eventually need to be replaced.
So because of all the extra nor'easters and the snow we had, because I know his ask was for 105 and approved at 90, so him reflecting, this was asking.
Are you talking capital, or are you talking his budget?
I'm under the operating expenses.
Okay.
On page
Oh, is
10.
overtime?
No, under page 10, under operating expenses, the sixth one down is 6698, which is sand, salt, and gravel.
Right.
So the ask was 105. I know that was 15 grand more than he had asked the previous year, and he was granted the same as previous year, 90. Well, my question was, we had so much snow this year. Was he able to look back, or does he come to you and say, hey, listen, I'm out of sand and salt?
No, it's not sand and salt that we're concerned about right now, it's overtime. And in the town council meeting on Monday, we are going to have to do some transfers for his overtime. But this was an abnormally tough year. So, no, he has not asked for that, and he's, if he needs it, he'll tell us. So I think he's okay.
So it's more of a manpower issue.
It was more of a, we've had some tough storms where we've had guys out there, and even the smaller storms where there's been a lot of ice on the road that people don't realize, we had a lot of men out there too. So that's where we ran into a problem. But it's not a problem, we're transferring, and he suggested where we take it from, and we are.
Denise, can I ask a question coming back, because Brendan mentioned the school bond?
Nancy just brought up, and it came from sand and gravel that he's paying these men for, so.
Well, that answers the question.
So could I come back and ask a question about the school bond, just because Brendan mentioned it? If we're on page 1 and it comes to the TMS capital repair, TMHS and TMS capital repairs. Is that 475 the bond payment?
I just gotta look at it, okay?
No problem.
What account number?
It's under account debt service 9660. It's on the first page.
It's the seventh one down.
7-1 down at the bottom.
8863, account number 8863.
No,
8863.
Oh, I'm on
Yep,
9690
Right,
debt
that's the
service.
major account is the 9660 debt service, and then the sub-account. And just so that the structure
Oh,
of
because
this-
it's payment and interest, is that
Yes.
right?
So
Yeah.
what you
So-
have is the debt service
Principal and
9.
interest.
You have
Okay.
debt service is just principal, then the next category, third, is interest, and then the bottom third is combined.
Okay.
But what's new in the fiscal year that we're looking at, that the 475.
So it's
Is it-
1.3
That's correct.
is the payment that we have to
Right.
make this year?
And
Yes.
the fiscal year, the current fiscal year that we're in, we only paid the an interest-only payment.
So keep in mind, so that's a lot that's driving this up, is that. Also, keep in mind, one of the other things that's driving this up is trash, because our trash account is high, because with the new company, we deferred payments that, so I think that's a $200,000 increase, but that's, that'll finally even out now.
So I know I asked the aid question earlier about what the total dollar amount, but is that 575, 374 that is on the expense sheet, will that be applied to that bond payment?
I don't, where are you?
So if, it's on
I
the
don't-
revenue, it says TMS,
Nancy can
THS
probably-
renovation aid, 575, 374. And I know I had asked last meeting if that number was correct, but will that 575 be applied to that 1.3?
I believe it is, and we emailed Cindy, she's gonna send me the breakdown on it, and I'll be able to print it out for you tonight.
So it would be deducted from that 1.3?
So, but Denise, was that in her explanation too?
I don't know, yeah.
We just emailed her, so she'll send it to us.
Yeah, we have to ask Denise,
Okay.
because that's unclear.
Well, I know the dollar amount was, but I was just asking, whatever dollar amount it is, if that aid money comes in, does it get applied to that bond payment?
Not necessarily, I don't think. Yeah, it goes into the general fund. Not necessarily.
It's from, it doesn't matter, pay the bond up front. Whatever else comes, whatever I get back from them, just like on the.
It goes into
in
the
our
general
revenue,
fund.
Just like the library, Jen.
So I guess sometimes what happens with the perception is when, if I'm a taxpayer and I go, oh my God, we have this $1.3 million payment coming up, but they don't really see that we're getting 575
Yeah, but
back.
that's not, that doesn't reflect the payment, that's going into the general fund. So it's, am I right?
So
I think the question she asked is, why
It's
does
shown
it,
on the revenue, just like the oldest.
why isn't it restricted to any funds that come back
I
from that?
think
Why isn't it
Denise
restricted
explained
to
this,
go to
I have that at
specifically those
home too.
bonds?
Okay, I apologize.
I think it was explained, I do have that email that Brendan has at home.
Okay,
Tell me later.
Yeah.
okay.
Well, on that note, I mean, you have to pay the bond.
No, I'm
Right.
not
So-
saying that you don't, but what I'm saying is if you're getting kind of, yeah, I guess my point is if you're getting any kind of aid back, why don't you restrict it to go to pay for that bond? So that, because it's not, and reduce the line item. Instead of the general fund, why don't
You may
you
not
direct
get
that?
that when the bond is due.
Right, I don't think you can do
I
that.
don't think you can do that.
You have to show revenue in and expenses out. Otherwise, otherwise you wouldn't want to get into that kind of off-budget stuff where you've got secret restricted aid that doesn't appear on the budget but lowers it in the line item.
But the end around game on that is technically that money's in the general fund now. So we have the authority to put that money from the general fund toward that line item.
I would say you don't have a choice. I mean, you have to pay the bond, so
Right.
you can't take out a bond, not pay it, and then take all the aid and spend it on something else.
No, that was, I guess my question was like, kind of like, when we sold the library last year. We restricted the funds from the sale of the library to go directly to the bond on the library. That was set up during resolutions last year. Can you do the same thing with renovation aid? Because that's money, because you took that bond out, that's why you're getting that revenue. Can you make it the same as what you did with the library, to pay on that bond.
So this is like a transparency.
It would have to be a resolution.
I'm just asking a question,
Yeah.
because it's, I mean, I
It would have to be a
specifically asked
resolution.
how much money was coming in and how much was.
I think we're getting confused here, though.
But the difference with the library is a kind of a one-time unexpected thing. So it's not, so from the point of view of the people who put that resolution in, if you don't put that in, the town says, okay, we're gonna pay this off we have to pay this on a bond, and then we need to increase our budget elsewhere, and we're gonna use this library money to do that. This sort of, from the taxpayer's point of view, sort of forced that bond payment to be reduced as opposed to something else increased with that one-time money. But I don't think you can do that, especially with aid that's coming in with strings attached from the state that's giving it to us. I think the restricted part is kind of just built into the whole process.
But it's an important thing, as you're saying, is that we have, if you looked at it as a line item, we took out a bond to repair the roofs and do work on the schools. What we're gonna be paying, the total cost is the $1.3 million, but with state aid of $575, this is the way it shakes out. The net cost to the taxpayers is this, is that. So it's an important distinction. The library would be another one of those categories where we get outside sources to help understand what's the net to the taxpayer. But I would agree here is that, and in fact, just to remind everyone, I think it was on the 25th of January, one of the first things that Cecil did during one of the meetings is that we have approved, if we look at the 9660, the debt service, we approved that knowing that we were obligated to do it. So I'm not saying we can't discuss and learn more about this, but that was one of the first things for us in terms of a vote.
Brendan, on that aid, that is the aid that we would get back if in fact it was substantially completed by that certain date. So there's no way you can consider the revenue, or,
Right.
I don't call it rebate, but the aid that comes back
Right.
under your netting it out, you still have to show us, because we may not get that 575. We may not,
This year.
depends how substantially complete the renovations are.
Yeah, they have to come in, RIDE comes in and inspects.
There's a process.
Yeah,
There is.
That's what Mr. Eric explained.
The only thing I'd add, and I thought this was what you were getting at last week when you brought this up, the school housing aid comes in two buckets. One is the one that goes to Rybeck, who funds our bond, and then there's anything additional. So if the school does X amount of work and it goes through the correct process, we get a percentage back. That's all additional, that's broken out. I can't bring it up on my tablet right now, but I think the last time I looked, this fiscal year, we've gotten about $115,000 back from that, or something thereabouts. That money just goes in the general fund, and it has no bond allocated to it, so that's floating around. So if somebody wanted to,
That's what we're talking about.
right, but it's not 575,000. I'm almost positive it's not this. That wouldn't be the middle school. That would be, or this project. That would be just random stuff they do, or did last year. But that money could be restricted to lower a school bond payment or do something specific.
That was that long list they gave us.
Well, no, that's the long
Nice,
list. If they spend on that long list, we get back a percentage on the municipal side. And I want to say that this year, so far, it's 115 thereabouts thousand. That's just in our, the state just says, thank you for spending the money, here's some of it back, and the town side can spend it however the town wants to spend it.
Okay. Once again, any other questions for the town council or? Thank you.
You're all set?
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
Okay, now the fun begins. And 7 o'clock.
Oh, thanks. See my notes?
And this is just my kind of giving the overview for some of the folks who were on, Deb or others who've been here before, thinking, Our goal now will be is to go through the docket, if people want to make motions to approve certain things, we'll go through the same process of seconding a motion, having discussion, and then voting on each one of the accounts. What will be really helpful that I ask is that if people move to discuss certain accounts, departments, if you will, is help us just all follow this by saying, okay, here's the title, here's the number, and what I'm including are all these items, right? And so that we make sure that when we're approving individual, if there are line items, we have discrepancies, that we just want to be clear. Mike will do as best as he can. He's been doing a great job of keeping track of all this. I had volunteered, I think it would be harder for me as the chair, is to keep, there's an electronic version of this in terms of keeping us as we're going all along. And I think if I have this right, I mean, what we would like to do, what I would recommend that we do as a committee, is we're voting on each one of these different accounts as we go through, but nothing's final until it's final. Until we have some sense of what the total budget is, and if that's too much, there can be changes to it, that there's not things that are set in stone, that once we do this now, that there's no way. The whole point is that we're gonna have to get through all of this and look at in aggregate what those expenses are. And a lot of this will also be determined if there are changes in the valuation numbers that Mr. Robert had given us that might make some differences in terms of whether we think there's too many expenses or not enough in terms. So is that a fair way, Deb or Justin, in terms of the ways, like we'll go through, we can vote on these things, but the hope is that after a week or two from now, we're not reopening something just because you didn't like what got voted on before, but that it's really, as we looked at in aggregate, we have some sense of where we are and then making changes. I mean, as a committee, you can do whatever you want. You can vote, you have the votes, you can turn things over, but in terms of process, I'm spelling out what I think is what the best way, the likely way to go.
So we would vote on something tonight, and then when you say that's not kind of final, well,
right, we'll be, is that, I guess that in past precedent, and this is, asking is whether, once you come down to how certain votes that take place, as to whether you can reopen an item.
well, just standard parliamentary procedure, anybody who voted for it could move to reconsider it. So the way we could do it is vote on anything people are sure of. If it passes and information changes, then somebody who voted for it can always bring it up, and even at just a pro forma, if we all agree that something, there's a motion.
Someone's not present, like tonight, they can't ask to
Right,
vote on something they're not here.
If they're not here, if they abstain, or if they vote against, if they're in the losing side of the vote, they can't bring it up. And that helps prevent people from every meeting saying, I want to visit this again until I win. And as part of our discussions, if something seems like it might be up in the air, we can always, we can always say, well, let's not vote on that now. Let's vote against changing it now or setting it now. So I don't. The only thing I wanted to be careful of is I don't want us to end up taking a vote now and everybody having the idea that it's just kind of a draft vote. It ought to be preliminary in the sense that we can always change everything down the line, but it's a vote, and unless something changes, that's how it is.
Okay. And I guess in the spirit of that, there was a request from members who were not here, is that if we could hold off the fire, the school, and the library tonight. So that was a request that I have in terms of voting. I know we had that precedent last year. I think there was a request not to do an item. So
Does that include the capital, or is that's non-capital?
it includes the capital.
I have a question. Do we have the list that Justin had last year of the things that are likely to be all agreed upon?
That was actually I think a motion that he had made last year.
Last year.
Mhm.
I just wondered if we were doing it that way again this
Yeah.
year,
Uh,
to save time. It's what it did, really, but it was just, there was, did you have any opinion on that, Justin?
I haven't had time to go through
You
it.
didn't have time to make the list. So, okay.
So essentially, at this point, then, we would skip down to 1010 on a general bill. Page 2.
That's correct.
I just wanted to make sure I was following you.
Correct, right. So, in the absence of a better way, last year, we had a proposal of a number of items. We can do that the next meeting. I'd recommend, unless there's other approaches that people want to go, is unlinear. We could follow, starting on page 2 with the town clerk's budget, count number 1010. And
Motion to approve 1010 at $255,855.
Second.
any discussion? Okay. A vote, all in favor? It's unanimous. Okay.
Motion to approve 1020 town council at $149,300.
Any discussion on the town council budget, 1020? Okay.
I keep looking at the contingency fund. I know the idea is to not tip hands on what's available for labor unions to negotiate for, and it just seems to me that putting it in a contingency fund essentially advertises what's available for them to negotiate for. So I'd rather see that reduced back down to the 40, and just reduce the
Can I ask a question
tax
about the
increase.
contingency?
Sure.
Is it only used for that usage, or if they end up short in another account rather than doing transfers, can they pull it from this account?
Well, contingency is whatever they want to spend it on. I mean, there was an article in Providence Journal that the governor was spending her contingency fund on all kinds of stuff, giving to charities, doing it.
So-
We don't do that.
If you
well,
ended up short
except for
in
East Bay Community
trash,
Action.
or if you ended up with an unexpected expense, it would come out of this account,
Right, but
correct?
the rationale when this was presented was that it was going up from 25 or 40
40.
in the current budget to 100 in order to cover anticipated increases in contracted labor without saying this is what we're budgeting for your contract increase.
Brendan, could I address that for a minute? We're currently in 2 contracts, the fire and the police. The fire, we're going into binding arbitration. We need to have money for raises or whatever else we need in a fund. It was decided that a couple of years ago that we do it this way so that we're not tipping our hand, like Justin said, but this is also if another benefit comes up that costs more money also. So I would think it would be very difficult for individual unions to figure out what their raises we put in here. But we need that because we didn't put it in the salary line items, because if we did, then we certainly did tip our hand. So if you take it out of there, you need to put it somewhere else. And I would suggest it stays, it was in other places. If it, I don't know if all of you were here, but it used to be in future needs. We had future needs and contingency, and we decided to combine them because if you look at future needs, if you're a union person, you can kind of figure that out. So we put them all in contingency. So if you decide to take that out, please find another place to put it, because it'll make negotiations very difficult. And we are going into binding arbitration with the fire department, keep that in mind.
Well,
So is there a way to make a resolution to limit what it can be used for?
I think that we've been very, I don't think
I'm
we've
not
been
saying- I'm not saying it's a
irresponsible.
trust issue, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
we've had other resolutions to say, this money can only be used for this.
Well, then you're really tying our hands.
Because then what if
All
you don't
right.
use it?
This has worked very well, and whatever we don't use goes into, back into the general fund. But this money is used, as you said, if we have a particularly bad winter and we have to pay for sand or overtime, that's where this comes from. It comes from any need that we didn't anticipate while doing this budget, we take from there. I don't think there's ever been a question that we've been irresponsible with this money. We have that there because no matter how good you budget, something comes up.
Well, the two things I would encourage the committee to consider, first, especially in the case of arbitration, the arbitrators will look and say, okay, you've got a contingency fund with at least some acknowledgement that this is meant for raises, so this is clearly money on the table for my arbitration decision. And that ties into the second point, which is the town council can spend money out of the general fund, the surplus general fund, an assigned balance that's in our budget, in our audit. They can spend that money with a majority vote in this, almost the same way they can a contingency fund. Moreover, even if they were to go below the 3%, they can vote as an emergency if, say, the arbitrator went crazy and call that emergency and spend below the 3%. So having it in a separate fund adds nothing in that regard, and it does highlight it more to tip a hand.
But no matter where you put it in the budget, you're highlighting it, so it has to be in the budget. And as far as taking from the general fund, there's specific rules in taking from the general fund. There is, Justin.
You can spend up to $500,000 out of the general fund without doing anything except voting as a majority.
Where are the rules?
But it has to be an emergency, it has to be.
No, only under 3%. So if the general fund is above the 3%.
Right, well, we're very seldom very much under.
It's pretty well
All right.
right now.
No, and I don't think it's ever been done where we've taken from the general fund, especially for raises, or, but you have to put it somewhere.
Well, no, I mean, you just spend the money. You don't have to say, let's take this out of the unassigned balance. You spend the money, and at the end of the year, they tally it up, and this is what's left, unless you're going to go under the 3%, and then you need to take a vote to do that. So there's really no reason to have contingency funds, I don't think.
Justin, where would you suggest putting that, how to handle it?
I would just take it out and leave it in the general fund balance.
No, wait a minute. I disagree with what he's saying, which doesn't surprise anybody, but I do. I don't think that we should take out the general fund for raises. I think this is we know we have this anticipated cost coming. Contracts cost money, and it doesn't have to be raises, it can be other things. So I think by putting it, by just saying we're not going to put anything in this for raises,
Well, how do you know you're not going to save money in the budget, in the contract?
we always try.
No, I mean, like, get them down to
It's
where you're getting
60
back from the unions.
It's $60,000. It's not a great amount. And I certainly, my personal opinion is that it should be in this budget. And I think it's more transparent if it is in this budget.
Well, I have a question. I mean, like you just said, you didn't want to tip your hand. So wouldn't that have been better to just leave everything quiet in the general fund, not talking about it at all?
I don't know if we can, I don't know if it's true we can take raises from the general fund. I don't think so. Nancy is shaking her head. I
Absolutely
don't
can.
think so, and I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to keep that as a
If there's a rule
practice.
that you can't, then where is that rule? It's not in the charter, I don't think, that you can't take it for.
Why would you not?
I was just trying to say, I would like it to be have kept quiet, not, now it's all out in the open. That's my only issue.
Well,
But we don't have to
We
give
know
what-
there's going to be increases with these contracts, and there's 2 contracts that are,
big
right now,
contracts.
big contracts. A lot of employees, there's just a lot at stake. They're lowest paid in our state, so. There's gonna be increases. We need to put it somewhere.
Have you ever gone to arbitration and it's come in less?
Now, don't quote me. No, well, I doubt it. And I've been in as a school committee chairman, I've been in arbitration. As a town, I think we've only been in arbitration 1 year or 2. Right, and it's non-binding, keep that in mind, so that's an easy arbitration.
We've been in 1 year.
Jan,
Go
Jan,
to arbitration for 1 year.
That's what I'm saying, has the arbitrator ever come in and said, no, we don't want it?
Why are we hiring him then? Welcome, Jan.
Thank you. I would just like to express a pretty strong concern with where this discussion is going, how much is being said in the context of arbitration and negotiations. I know that if the labor attorney that we have were here, he would say something to that effect. It's not a good idea to start talking about, do we think there's going to be an increase, how much, why do we not know that it's going to be a decrease? I just have to strongly recommend that you not go there, because it makes it harder to have a successful negotiation. Similarly, the point was made that you can be advertising that we're setting money aside for a certain amount of increase. You don't want to do that. And finally, in my experience, in every single town, the real no-no is to say, oh, you can always take it out of the general fund. That's just contrary to the general way town government works.
So any other comments or questions?
Well, just in response to that, with due respect to the new town administrator, this is an ongoing argument over years in town, and in my view, certainly with the idea of whether the town council can spend money out of the general fund, I'd be happy if they couldn't. But when that's not widely known, what you get is a situation in which the general public, taxpayers, voters, all think the budget's the budget's the budget. And then the town council goes and buys a gas station without any authorization from the budget. So that's why there are pluses and minuses. Everything isn't about negotiating with the unions. The taxpayers have a right to know what strings are on all of the accounts in the budget. And I think that's what we do when we say they can, when we point out the fact that they can spend money out of the general fund without any authorization from the budget.
Right, I've heard surprises like that as a citizen. I just had no idea they were going to be buying the gas station. But I don't think that also it should be that the logic is that we're lowest paid in the state. We're a different type of town. We aren't like all the other towns in any particular way. We're our town only. And we have people here who have had trouble paying their utility bills due to the large tax increases. So that's taking away from some of the other things that some of people want to do. So just keep that in mind. And there's been a lot of foreclosures in this town.
There's people in Barrington that can't afford to pay their bills.
What was that?
There's people in Barrington that can't afford to pay their bills.
Well, that's even worse. They have higher taxes there, don't they? I don't know what they're per thousand.
So let's keep it to here. We have a budget request from the town council. There's a line item for a contingency. Contingencies could be used for different things. I think we're going to face a number of these debates about how much discretion we allow the town council or not. And that's where I think why we're elected is to kind of make some of the calls on this stuff. So we have a motion and a second on accepting this line item. If there's any other discussion, I'll certainly entertain. Okay, then bring it to a vote that this was, make sure you got it, Mike.
It was account number 1020, town council, for $149,300.
Great. All in favor? All opposed? That's 2. So 6-2, right?
I'd like to make a motion for account 1030 Board of Canvassers at $53,100.
Second.
Any questions or discussion about this line item? This was the one that we had said was adjusted, and that the election account item, that's 6329, is a restricted amount. All right, bring it to a vote. All in favor? All opposed? And no abstention. The motion carries.
Wait,
I didn't, Ruth, did you have your hand up?
who abstained?
To abstain?
No, I voted yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, I couldn't see. So 7 to 1. 7 to 1.
But that was opposed, not abstained.
Opposed, yes. I think Ruth, I couldn't see her hand.
Okay.
Sorry, Ruth.
It's okay.
Account 1040, make a motion that we accept it at $26,100. Town hall operating expenses.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of account number 1040 for $26,100? All in favor? And opposed? Motion carries.
Can I say something before the legal services vote? I just want to say that I'm very concerned about the legal spending that goes on in this town. There are businesses that have been here for many years that we spend legal money on that we really don't need to do. We really don't need to do that. And now with this other litigation, I'm not sure if this budget covers the labor contracts. It's the Labor Council, right? So all of the fire and police arbitration and all of that is costing the town money, and because they can't seem to agree on something that's fair. So I am very concerned about it. The over spending on legal services, on lawyers. It's just, it's something that I'm just seeing going up and up and up. So just with that said.
On that note, I'd like to make a motion to approve account 1050 in amount of $213,000 as delineated in the approved budget for the current fiscal year. So that would be $98,000 for town solicitor, $50,000 for litigation, $18,000 for prosecutions, land use issues at $12,000, and labor council at $35,000.
Okay, do we have a second on?
I'll second that. I mean, yeah, Labor Council went up $25,000. Just.
Is that because we're
But that's what I'm
doing
saying.
2 labor contracts?
I'm concerned about that
You
spending.
have to have the money to have representation.
Don't have to
Before we move on,
spend
Mr.
anything you don't want to.
Mr. Katz, can you give me those numbers again so I can write them, please?
They're all right on, they're just
Under the
from the
last
approved
year.
budget for 2017, 2018.
So you're going back to the approved 2017, 2018?
Yeah.
Nancy,
So, I just have a question about this.
we're
So
going to start that.
the labor, the unions can't decide, so now the town has to get representation. So we should not have the town have representation?
No, I
to-
didn't say that. I said don't spend as much. That's what
But-
I'm more concerned about. I just think that
So-
it doesn't need to be that high. That's what I'm saying.
Well, we
But
don't
we're going to go to
have,
litigation either way.
we don't have policy setting authority. We have authority over the budget, and that's the most direct authority that taxpayers and voters have over what happens in the budget. And so the lower you put that number, the more pressure you put on the town government to keep the number down. If it's in the budget, then the pressure is not there. So
Just
the
saying
taxpayer
yes, yes.
applies pressure by lowering the budget in this stage of our process.
I would like to say we have groups in this town that actually bring lots of litigation, including, I'm going to kind of minimize it a little bit, but we have to spend money because citizens in the town bring up litigation. So I don't have a problem with what's being asked, but it's,
Right, there are different reasons for different litigation, and
Well, but litigation costs the town money.
Just pushing for higher raises
but
is
we-
not
we all-
that's not really
but we all
a,
pay taxes, so when groups in town, especially political action committees.
Michael,
Right.
I'm responding, okay.
When I'm
finish,
talking,
yeah.
you can
Okay,
respond anything you'd like.
that's fine.
I don't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I'm just saying, my feeling is we have political action committees in town that make us spend money for litigation. So that's my 2 cents why we need more money, because people keep coming after us, and we have to spend money to litigate.
Mike, may I ask, what percentage of this amount do you think is attributable to that?
I have no idea.
I'd also point out that some of these lawsuits that have been brought by citizens have been rolled on and on and on and on by town councils who just wouldn't settle, wouldn't just pushed it and kept going and going. And if the taxpayer restricts their budget for these things, it's a little bit harder for
They
the
won't
town
do that.
to play that game where they hold on to things that could be easily resolved for years and years and years, maybe for talking points, so they can say, we need this money because
I
taxpayers
agree it
keep.
goes both ways. I'm just saying, in my experience, just with my eyes open the last couple of years, I've seen litigation cost the town more money, just since I feel like I've been watching and paying attention. I'm not saying directly from a certain group, I'm just saying it happens, and we seem to have lots of litigation.
And those smaller ones are going to happen. This is pretty big increase to just ask for raises. That's what they're doing. And so, we've had a lot of difficult economy in the last couple decades. It's been very difficult in this town in particular, maybe compared to other towns. Just be careful.
For the town council to negotiate, the labor unions are still gonna ask for their raises and negotiate it out, and there has to be legal counsel to represent the town. By deducting the money from this line, you're not getting the town any out of it.
And it's going to happen, we're going to have to pay it. But I also want to make note that the new line for review and rewrite zoning code, you took totally out $30,000 that we needed, that we really need.
So if I say something, Brendan, just keep in mind that labor council went up because we not only will be dealing with the fire department, but we are also going to start ASME and the Teamsters negotiation. So we'll in this budget, there'll be 3 that we'll be still working on, and that's why we increased that. And Debbie we have a lawyer there, and it doesn't necessarily mean to give raises, but when we are doing contracts, we have to have a lawyer. It's the responsible thing to do, so he can give us legal advice. So, and this happens. We go into negotiations, but there's 2 negotiations that will be starting during this budget cycle, and that's why that went up. And as far as the rewriting of the zoning code, some of our problems is that some of these zoning codes are not specific, and we've been having problems with that because we need to rewrite them. They're ancient. There's some things in there that we have been sued about, and we are looking into that so we'd have less litigation. So that's why that's there. And we've been talking about doing that for many years and just haven't put the money in there because of priorities. But it's getting to the point we really do have to rewrite these.
Mrs. Dimidaros, may I ask while you're at the microphone, for relatively small lawsuits, say a taxpayer group sues the town or files some complaint or something against the town, would that be all included in the town solicitor's general agreement with the town?
It depends if we have to go to court. So this would be with, well, it would be included with the litigation. Yes, yes.
So that would be under the $98,000 for the town solicitor would be?
No, it would be under the litigation. No, you're wrong. What? It all depends, Justin. It depends on how far the matter goes and where we go with it. So, and that would be all there.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded for $213,000. Bring that to a vote. All in favor? All opposed?
Oh, sorry, I want to change mine to yes on the other one, sorry. In favor.
Okay. The motion fails.
I'd like to make a motion for the legal services budget to be 280,000.
I'll second that.
Second, okay.
280,000?
Yeah. Yes.
What did you change? Which line item are you?
Moved and
I'd say
seconded.
rewrite zoning code down to 20,000. And sorry, that's 10, then another 4,000. And labor council to 56,000. Check my math, please. Okay. Just balancing a little bit of the two different ends of it as much as possible. Also, rewrite zoning code, I think, can be done over a couple of years, you know, possibly some this year, some another year, just mentioning.
I will make one comment on that.
Yeah, it
There's a
was,
certain area of town that's about ready to have a dirt bike path in the middle of it. That's zoning, that's land use. They're going to be desperate for a remedy.
And isn't that going to litigation as well? Isn't
And
that
if you
particular
live there,
issue
you
going to
would want it
litigation as
solved.
well?
Oh, yeah, it can be one of the first things then. That's
Well,
fine.
that's what this gets used for.
It'll be the first thing if it's important, right?
Well, that's not the way the zoning code gets done, you know, it sort of gets done
They can't do it all at once.
as an entire body.
They can't do it all at once. They don't have time to do it all. It goes, you know, you can do it over a period of 1 year, 2 years. As she said, they've been waiting years already to do this, so it wouldn't hurt to not do it in 1 or 2 years, could do it in 3 years, 1 year. It's flexible in that way. Some are not as pressing as others. That may be a pressing one, and I agree, I wouldn't want a dirt path either.
Well,
But-
we don't want to end up like Little Compton either.
In what regard?
Oh, my God.
No, in what regard?
The vineyard.
so we have a motion on the table to approve $280,000 on this line item and an explanation of dropping 2 of those sub-accounts. Discussion, bring it to a vote. All in favor? 2. All opposed? 6, the motion fails.
Motion to approve legal services, 1050 for 294,000.
Okay, discussion? We've been there. All in favor? All opposed? Okay. Then we move to it's the account number XXX. Our planning and building department.
I offer this as a request. Obviously, I can't stop people from making motions, but if we could just leave this as one to discuss down the road, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, I have no.
Maybe that one and the planning board both,
Yeah, they kind of tie together.
they're kind of tied together.
Okay. Then that would put us to next item, which would be account number 1080, the zoning board of review.
I'd like to make a motion to approve account number 1080 zoning board of review,
Second?
for $4,300, excuse me.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Okay.
Motion to approve 1090 town sergeant for 1,500.
second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? And we have one opposed. Jay?
No, I wasn't opposed.
Oh, okay.
I was raising my hand again because I was looking to see if I got counted.
The motion carries unanimous.
I'd like to make a motion for account 1100 to be 11,500.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Okay. Town administrator.
I'd like to propose account 1120, town administrator, for $164,177.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Well, first do we know how because we should have actual numbers, or not so much of a estimate for the department management salary. Do we want to take that into consideration that's the number on the nose? Okay.
Right.
Also, I'd like to suggest that, as I do every year, every year it's taken out the League of Cities and Towns Newport Chamber line item of $9,377. These are, especially the League of Cities and Towns, these are organizations that we don't, they're funded whether we join them or not. The system of our government is that we have elected senators and representatives to advocate for our interests at the state level, to be paying lobbyists. Some mayors in the state say that what you buy with that money is nice new suits for the executive manager or executive director. And to be hiring a lobbyist when that's what we have elected representatives for, it just contributes to the morass of government. So I'd recommend voting this down and then removing that line item.
Is that, recognize the town administrator?
Thank you. In my experience, the League of Cities and Towns is tremendously helpful to the towns, to administrators and managers in particular. I don't see them so much. I know they do lobbying, that's absolutely true, but I see them more as people who do research that can be very helpful for our own operations. They create opportunities for us to get training, education that we need to do the job well, to get up to speed on new trends and developments, for example, with the whole OPEB program, the other post-employment benefits program, which is a tremendous issue in terms of fiscal impact. It has been really invaluable to myself as an administrator or manager. And if anything, I actually think it helps us be more efficient. Instead of having 39 cities and towns trying to do it all on their own, you can really rely on each other, exchange information, get best practices, et cetera, et cetera. So I actually think it's a very, very worthwhile investment based on my own experience.
I would only suggest that, nothing stops any administrators, mayors, or anybody from calling each other, getting together, to have, and working together. That's part of their job. There doesn't need to be an additional bureaucracy created in order to facilitate that.
So are you making an amendment?
No, in the interest of time, I'm just suggesting you vote down the number, and then we can amend that, and I would move that if this is voted down.
All right, any other discussion? All right, take it to a vote. So the motion is just to approve the 164,177. All in favor? 4, 5. And all opposed? and then, I guess we would have one abstention. So the motion carries. Okay. The next line on the planning department, 1150, is actually part of the XXX, which will defer to a future meeting. So that
1150, planning department?
correct. So we'll defer discussion and vote on that. So Jen, you abstained this last one. So that brings us to top of page 5 to account number 1970, the probate court.
I'd like to make a motion for account 1970 probate court to be 11,000.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Account number 2120, the tax assessor's office. Motion?
I'd like to make a motion for 2120 tax assessor to be 158,502.
Second.
Discussion?
My only discussion is that I think there are line items here that could be reduced. If the budget committee were to assert itself a little bit more. I'm not going to go through and make motions on them all and waste our time, but that would be my suggestion.
Any other questions, comments?
I would just say that, with that said, I mean, I know this is a long process, but what sticks out at you? And it's not really a fair statement to say things could be reduced. The whole budget could be reduced, but.
Right, but there are, in the past, we've had discussions about things like education, seminars, telephone, some of the services. These are areas where there could be savings across the board. And they could be a matter of some discussion.
Some of them have gone down.
Yeah, some of them are reduced.
Like the 2,500 tech services from 2016-17 went down to 1,200. So from back a couple of years, a couple of things have gone down. But yeah, I mean, there was a salary increase. So I didn't see it as a large discussion item.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the revaluation, 2130.
Motion to accept 2130 for restricted revaluation for $45,000.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
Is this what we pay vision appraisal?
Sorry?
Is this what we pay vision appraisal? 'Cause I just want to mention one thing then. That company has been doing it in Tiverton for quite a while, and we have had issues, and also Massachusetts has had issues with that company. I'm not going to go into the details here, but I just want to let you know what I think and what I've heard. $45,000 is a lot of money, and I'm just questioning it for them to come in and raise our taxes. So I'm just, in our valuations. So it's just I'm not saying not to vote this in right now, but it went up 5,000 from last year.
This goes to the full reval.
Oh, to what? Sorry.
Yeah,
This
just,
is in a restricted account that instead of coming up with the 200,000 to 300,000 for the year for the full reval, he
Okay.
spaces it out, and that's why it's restricted.
So it's paid to vision appraisal.
Yeah, it's kind of dividing the cost over several years. So
Well, it may or may not be
roller
that.
coaster effect.
That was my follow-up question to that. Is Vision has a contract,
Yes.
and how long is that contract? because they're on my radar now, too.
It's probably 3 years, but I have to tell you, we weren't always with Vision.
No, I know.
We weren't always with them, though. But I'm pretty sure it's 3 years. We do have a signed contract. I can pull it out and get a copy.
Do you know what year of that contract we're in? Are we in year
I'm
one?
not sure. But it wouldn't matter who the contractor
Yeah, for
was,
this
just
purpose.
still have to keep
Yeah.
this.
It says
Otherwise, you're gonna be hit
specifically
with
for
it.
them, it's to build an account.
Okay,
that
thank
we
you.
can afford to.
Thanks.
And to allay the concern about them increasing taxes, the appraisal, all it really does is shift the taxes around town. It's the town government raising their spending that increases the taxes.
Right.
So
thanks.
the only thing that happens with the valuation, if one part of town becomes relatively more expensive than another part of town, the taxes shift in that direction. That's the only effect of the appraisals, of the valuation as far as raising taxes.
Right, so I can address using another company at another time. Thank you.
I'll email you the contract.
I would like it, thank you, Nancy. To the whole budget committee.
Okay. All in favor of 2130, the $45,000? So unanimous. Okay, town treasurer.
I'd like to make a motion to approve that in the amount of $186,333.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Okay, all in favor? That carries. Yep, unanimous. Okay, the account number is at the very bottom of page 5, 2150. We're on the tax collector.
I'll make the motion to approve the 128,471 for the tax assessor department,
I'll second.
2150.
Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. And we have the line item for funding the tax sales. That's account number 2170.
I'll make a motion to approve account 2170 tax sale for $3,000.
Discussion?
I just have a quick question, it's not a lot of money, but looking at the actual for 16 and 17, what was the reason behind the increase? It's almost threefold.
It depends on how many pieces of property go on the tax sale.
So
Because
core
the charge
16
is
here.
actually for the type of work and the auctioneer that performs the tax.
So that year was just a low.
So it might have been low. I think like this past year, it's higher because there's a lot of little lots on lots, things like that, stuff at Heights.
Okay.
Nancy, and just to be clear on that again, a lot of that is potentially recouped if the sales.
It's recouped if the
On the revenue
property
sales.
sells.
Yeah.
But if the town has to keep it, we have to pay the fee.
Okay. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Uh, 2190, insurance costs. Have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve for purposes of getting into discussion, the $3,222,283, 2190 insurance.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion.
One of the questions I had, I have a note here that there was a possible adjustment down on something here. I want to say it's with the group health insurance retirees and group dental insurance retirees. I don't know if you guys remember that. There was a possible adjustment.
Was that Lisa Rett that gave you that?
it's a possibility. She said that there was a possible adjustment down on 2 of those numbers.
I don't think it went down that much, but that would have been Denise Surratt with the treasurer. Send you something on that.
The only thing I would say on that then is, do we want to defer it?
Defer it?
Continue?
Defer until we can ask her.
Okay.
I withdraw the motion.
So, I don't know, do you have to vote on a withdrawal?
Well, no, I mean,
No, you can withdraw.
yeah, I'll withdraw that motion for the approval on 3222283-2190 insurance for deferral on discussion on the possible adjustments down.
That'd move us to account number 2200, audit of town accounts.
I'd like to make a motion for 2,200 audit of town accounts for 22,000, oh, sorry.
22,000?
2,200 audit.
The account
of town
number
accounts.
is
Oh,
2200.
sorry.
To be
You
22,000.
said it right. Yeah. I second that.
Okay. Any discussion?
I'd like to change the account number if it's going to be $22,000 for the extended team.
Can we switch them?
All in favor?
We paid for the second year of the contract.
Ruth, did you make the motion on that one?
Yes.
And Dave, did you?
Deb.
Okay, yeah, yeah, you're right.
That was unanimous, correct?
Yes, it was. All right. Move to 2220, which is the pension plans. And the first item in there, I guess we want to take that individually police pension, so that would be the sub-account number 5263. Motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we accept the pension plan, police, $700,000.
We're just on this. Okay. Any discussion?
Just want to make sure that that is the agreed upon amount with the state. It meets the, okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Hey, hold on, I'm sorry. Is that, so it meets the arc, but less could meet the arc too.
Well, that rate is lower. They changed some mortality
Tables.
expectations and stuff. So I want to say that we're only now, what, 65 or 66% funded? 67? Okay, 67%. In fact, the administrator was at a pension meeting today, so he probably know more than I do on it. So, yeah, that's going to meet the arc, but it's not. It's just going to keep us paying the payment that the plan, our plan provides for.
I haven't refreshed my memory on all of the abstruse things about pensions, but the ARC is the amount you put in absent any amortization, correct? So that's what you would have to put in if it were just a healthy pension plan going on and on. So that should be much lower than the 700,000, correct?
No, because if it goes below 60%, we're going to be in critical. Right.
Right, but that's still more than, that still can happen paying more than the ARC, right?
As I understand it, in order to get out of the critical status, we had to agree with the Department of Revenue to a particular improvement plan and schedule, and this is part of that schedule to get us, and we've made some significant progress from where it was in the 50% range to where we currently are, but we're supposed to be heading towards 100%. And ultimately, that actually is in the best interest of the town, so you don't have that unfunded liability hanging over your head. So.
I recall last year, we had, the actuary came and spoke with us and gave us some of the updated things. And then also, there was a discussion about the plan. It was a multi-year, 5-year, I think, agreement that we had, the 700,000. I can't remember what year we are within the 5. Is there any recollection?
Well, Councilman Edwards reiterated that last week and the week before as well, that we have an agreement with the state on this 700,000.
See, I don't, that's kind of new from my recollection. I don't think that's the specific numbers and all that, I don't think it's quite and I looked up the agreement, and it doesn't strike me as something that's worded as that this is what you will pay. I think it's more, they approved a plan. That doesn't mean it's got to be an agreement. It's not like a contract with the state, in my understanding of it. And that wasn't something I remember hearing in the past when these numbers have gone up and down. I mean, a couple years ago, it was at 650. And I think that's certainly possible to do, especially since they say the returns are going great. So I would suggest this could be looked at again.
But Councilman Edwards said 20 years.
Yeah.
20 years.
That's what he had said to us the other
This
day.
amortization sheet is actually, you guys seeing where it increases that payment, that our payment's gonna increase, keep increasing. I can get that schedule and try to send that to you too.
Well, one option that,
Yes, I'm not gonna do this in the morning, I hate to tell you. It'll be like Monday or Tuesday before you get it.
one option too would be is to invite, whether next week, whether it's Tuesday or Thursday, to see if time would permit either a member of the pension board, which I think the treasurer is a member of, and get some clarity on that, whether we could get the actuary in and whether that could change things. We could defer voting on this now and see if people
Thank
feel
you.
that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have to withdraw that motion.
That was Mr. Edwards that made the motion.
Would you like to withdraw it, Mr. Edwards? So we can defer it.
Yeah, we'll defer it till, they'll withdraw it, so we can defer it till next meeting.
And we'll try to get both of those, get a member of the board as well as the actuary. And that was helpful. Okay. And then that brings us to the next sort of subcategory within pension plans, the ERISA pension accounts. And those are the sub-accounts 5261 through 5267.
I'll move that number at 622,998 for all of the ERSRI pension accounts.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Those come right from the state, the 10%. Other than that, special return. Right.
All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay. We have a line item, a new line item. It's the OPEB, the other post-employment benefits, right? That's what OPEB means.
There was no request.
There's no request. So it would be, assuming we zero that, so making a motion to have that at 0.
Second.
So I'll make that now. All in favor? Okay.
Make a motion for line item for Social Security, 2250, 555,181.
Any discussion? Based on calculations on the payroll dollars. All in favor? Okay, we move to the top of page 7. Unemployment security. Motion to,
I'll make the motion to approve account number 2270 unemployment security in the amount of $10,000.
Second.
discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Unfunded liability, sick and vacation.
As a point of information, could we have our memory refreshed on what this line item covers?
That, the unfunded liability, that's That's gonna cover any retirements as far as whatever they have for sick time or vacation time on the books or comp time. Any people that retire.
Is it just,
In all the departments, doesn't matter if it's fire, police.
is it just retirement, or if you leave in good standing, are you allowed?
It's whatever you do when you leave, yes.
But yes, so it's not just
Somebody
retirement,
left-
if you have an employee that decides to leave, you have to pay them out anything they have on
It's
the books.
whatever is due the employee when they leave.
I guess a question would be is that we can look back in the actuals in fiscal year 17, there was 156,000 was the actual expense. We've had varying ones. Is the backup behind this based on certain knowledge of retirements and then guesswork on what we don't know? Is that fair?
Because no one has to retire, but it's kind of gauged on how many are eligible to retire, or we might have mentioned retirement, and we just kind of put the figures together as best we can.
Worst case.
Don't worry, I don't have a retirement payout. I just.
Do we have a feel for, it's probably not something you have on a piece of paper somewhere, the number of employees that we have in town, municipal side, that are in that retirement range? I know for fire, it's probably spread out, police is probably spread out a little
I
bit.
mean, we have listings of all our employees, so we could look to
And
see
data
how
fire.
many are. But I mean, anybody can leave for any reason.
Yeah, besides
and they-
retirement.
You don't have to be 20 years on
Yeah.
police force or something, you'd still have a payout due to you for the accrued time. But I'll look, you want me, that
No,
would be
no, no,
discriminating
no, no.
to say how many of
I'm
those.
just debating on rolling the dice here.
But you came up with this number because you looked at what you
Yes, each
thought,
department
what
has
was a
their
reasonable expectation.
4 retiring, or I have 2 retiring.
Never accounts for someone who's an unexpected termination.
Which
Yeah,
was the
that's why
16,
it's
17.
rounded number as opposed to exact.
I'd like to make a motion to approve account number 2300, unfunded liability, at $100,000.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
I just had,
oh, go ahead.
go ahead, no, you go first.
As I've expressed already tonight, some of these budgeting decisions come down, we don't have authority over policy, but how we set the budget can send a signal on behalf of taxpayers, and especially with some of the things we've learned this year in particular with, somebody takes time off and it goes into their sick leave for time they take now, but then it accrues, and when they get out at the end of their career, they get the money at the new rate, whatever they get, whatever they retire at. That starts to, I don't know, I'm uncomfortable with a lot of that, so I'm going to vote against this on that principle.
Do you have a different number in mind, or just the principle?
Well, I mean, it's just a guess anyway, so, I mean, I could pick a number. My principles are okay with 10,000, but in as much as I don't expect much likelihood of success of a number I would put forward, why take the time?
And I might
Well,
not.
They base these, oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead first.
I'm sure, well, I'm not sure. Where I work, they don't do it properly. When people retire or just leave, we generate overtime, and then it's our fault. Well, it's the same kind of thing here. The various department heads know who within their department is eligible to retire. And at that point, smart money says you assume they will. So now you have a number. And then you do that for all the employees in the town, and now you've got a bigger number. I assume that this $100,000 is a reflection within a reasonable amount of that number. If we lower it, we're still gonna have to pay it. It's not gonna go away. It may go away, they may not actually retire, but at least the money is there. If it isn't there, then we gotta hit the contingency fund to pay it.
I understand the point with, not necessarily that I agree, but I understand the point behind not, trying to change the policy by not funding it. But at this day and time, they're working within a contract, and if they leave, we're gonna pay it anyway.
Sure.
So even if you put 0 in it, they're gonna take it from somewhere else and pay it.
I'm sure, but when, say for example, a maintenance foreman is caught by television doing stuff he shouldn't be doing, possibly, allegedly, or a police officer is having quiet time in the middle of the night and everybody goes to sleep in their cars. When the council decides to settle that and they get to gracefully retire with their full pension, at least they have to say, you know what, to pay off the sick time bonus to the guy who has alleged to be working on his own projects on town time and keeping his sick time for his entire career, to pay that off, we're going to have to transfer money from this account to this account to make that happen. And I think it's a valuable exercise for people to be able to see that happen.
Well, I think that the regular person who wants to leave their job is not going to look at that line item to say, yes or no, there's money there. If they're going to retire, they're going to retire. Whether there's 0 there, or 100,000, or 500,000, they're going to retire and let the town figure out where the money comes from.
And I also think where you're giving the bad example, and I understand that did happen here, how about the person with good service of 30 years that has been a good employee, that has it rightfully earned this time?
Well, as I said, we don't have the authority to set policy, so whether we fund this account or not, that person gets their money. It's just another step that has to be taken to get the money there, another point where if it's a good retirement or a bad retirement, that transfer of money from another account to this account would be either, thanks for your service, we're happy to give this to you, or, sorry, citizens, this is what we agreed to because we were afraid to go to court.
Mr. Chairman.
Right now, that account for this year is $8,900 in the red. So we budgeted $80,000. We've spent $88,898 so far. I don't know if anybody will leave between now and June.
Which is possible.
That would be Mr. Rexon's.
So we're in the ballpark with 100,000.
Well, I may not understand it. Why is this not covered under all the separate departments? I don't understand why the police is not under the police and so forth.
Oh, because we have no idea who's going to be. We
all
don't know if
departments.
somebody's going to
No,
leave.
I just wondered
the fire
why.
department, or the police department, or the town hall, or DPW. So it's just put in one account. And actually, when it's, the treasurer handles the payouts.
Right, I understand, but if it's a policeman, then it would be really part of the police budget.
But if each department budgeted for who they thought was going to retire, you'd have more than $100,000. You'd have,
Oh, you're saying this brings it down? Okay.
it kind of keeps it more control on it.
Okay.
Right.
Because otherwise, we'd all be guessing in every department, and just, that would escalate.
Okay, if that works. Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Any other comments? I mean, it seems to me that we had an actual 156,000 in FY17. FY18 we're in right now, we're at 90, and the request is 100. That as a estimate of what might hit us for the FY19 seems reasonable. Unless there's any other questions or comments, we'll bring it to a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And then, as I had mentioned, if I started out, there's a couple of the areas that if we could defer to later meetings, the fire department being one. I didn't have request on the police department, so if people are interested in the operation areas of the police department. So we have, there are a couple ways in terms of, there's the groupings and categories. The main account is the 3330 Police Department. First grouping, the 5,000, the 5,100 are payroll-related accounts, and then it's broken up into other categories. So
I'm just gonna put my 2 cents in. I feel like if we're not gonna touch the school and the fire department and the library, we should leave the police department. Those are the 4 biggest ones. I know DPW's in here, but it's just my 2 cents. I'll vote on everything if everyone wants to, but it's just, wouldn't mind grouping that with all the other big ones.
I'm gonna make a motion.
But could we vote on the general contractual mandated expenses that we can't change?
Well, just 2 cents.
I mean, there's 3 people not here, like, I think the body of the budget committee should be here for the big ticket items, so to speak. That's just my feeling. If you guys want to vote on them, I'm ready to vote, but that's just the way I feel.
If we're going to hold it out, we should hold the whole department out.
I certainly don't, I don't have a need to push it.
There's, my 2 cents, the expense-wise, they're only up 60-something thousand, and it's because of apparently a second records clerk. And I think that money was shifted, and there wasn't really a bunch of discussion with Chief Jones, so.
My only 2 cents is if the people that were not here that made the request that we hold the fire and the other ones didn't make a request for this department, this is a major department to get through. And then if we're erring on the air of caution at the time, maybe we could do this one this evening. But that's just my opinion.
I will vote on it if need be. I just wanted you guys to know my thought, that's all.
Thanks, Mike. With that said, I'll make a motion to approve 3330 Police Department, $2,871,027 on that first portion.
So the motion and the second is covering the first grouping, correct?
Down to 5150, 5100 to 5150, that first grouping on the 33.
And Dave, your number was the one there on the sheet?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
This is all per contract, right?
Correct. These, the salary monies, and then
I'd like to make a motion for general contractual mandated expenses to be approved at $154,200.
I'll second that.
discussion. Vote, all in favor? All opposed? 7.
That was 154 too,
Correct. Correct. All right. Take a motion for the next category in terms of operations.
Motion to approve operations at $204,700.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion?
I just wanted to mention why I'll vote no is I just believe there's too much expense here in general, so just letting you know. No specific.
What would you like to cut back, Ruth?
I'm not going to do that right now. I just feel that it's, for this small town, it's just, I think it's high. I mean, the actual in 16-17 was 166,000. So, you know, and I understand the actual, that it's gone up, but last year, but I just feel it's, just when I look down through it, I did visit, you know, all the police buildings and saw what was going on, and I love what they do. It's not that. I just want to keep the costs lower. I don't think I'm going to be getting that vote through, so I just wanted to mention it, that's all.
And I found out, we went site visit, I'm just really impressed with what they do with what they have. It seems like a pretty tight ship in terms of the way things are run and the resources that they have. Especially, I mean, it was the praise for the mechanic was pretty amazing. I know there's many other things that they do and other people who are involved, but this was someone that was cleaning, doing all kinds of different jobs.
Right, and we're talking about Chief Blakey most of this in the past, right? So I do approve of him very highly, so I'm just saying, but and going forward.
Well, he's not here now, but.
No, I know.
When we visited, we were there right after that storm. They had worked double shifts. They had worked through the night.
They got 159 calls, or 157 calls. I said that was the most they ever fielded. That's without all the duplicate calls for the same.
It was clear that Chief Jones, this was his budget, that he had put this together and thought about it very carefully.
Right, and I haven't really had a chance to see how he's going to operate, but yes, this is operations. This is, I'm not sure what, if what you're mentioning, Michael, falls into this, but I do, of course, I understand. I love what they do. I just want to watch this budget. That's all I'm saying by my vote.
So we have a motion, right? And a second? Second. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll make a motion to approve the animal control portion, account number 51026470 and 6626, for the total amount of $73,040.
Any discussion? All in favor? And opposed? Municipal court.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 1960 municipal court for a total of $18,500.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I have one question. Nancy, are we getting a new court judge?
We did.
Is his salary changing? Is there going to be a salary change?
No, everything was the same. And this is now going to be under the police department as opposed to the town clerk.
No other questions? All in favor? That's unanimous. Harbor and Coastal Management Commission. Total of $2,100.
Make a motion to approve 3350 Harbor and Coastal Management Commission, 2,100.
I'll second that.
Comments? All in favor? Carries. Move to the Harbor Master account, 3360.
I'd like to make a motion that 3360 Harbor Master be approved in the amount of $28,110.
I'll second that.
Any comments? Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's 8-0. Public Works. So like other ones, we could, I don't think there's, unless there's changes that people are looking for, the the salaries is one total, and then the top of page 11, the operations is a separate one, so ask that we address those. The 5540 Public Works, and the salaries, those are the 5100 accounts. We take those together, and then separately the operating accounts.
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve account number 5540, Public Works. Account number is 5100, 5101, 5102, 5104, 5108, 5150, the new continuing education / licenses, and account 5168, which totals $628,114.
We'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Move to the operating expenses.
I'd like to make a motion for operating expenses, all of those items under operating expenses to be approved at $350,150.
And a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor? And opposed? $3380, the lighting, street lighting.
Make a motion to approve 3380 street lighting for $44,000.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Just kind of baked in numbers on, there we go. All in favor? That's an 8-0. All right, 3420 hydrant services.
I'd like to approve, make a motion to approve 3420 hydrant services for a total of $1,500.
Any discussion? Vote, all in favor? It's unanimous.
All the dogs in town will be very happy.
You have to shovel them out
You get
first.
shoveled out.
They can see the hydrants.
But at least they'll mark them in yellow.
Okay, so we hit now the big line item, 5,500 rubbish recycling collection. And this is a contract amount, correct?
I'd like to make a comment before we do anything. I just wanted to say that I know this is a big amount, and I know when we vote on this, people will probably make noise, but I think we owe it to the town council because we voted on this earlier in the year and could have been a lot more money. So no matter what happens, we're saving the town money. We did save the town money.
Well, just to have it said, yes, it's a big number, but in 2 years, it's probably going to double.
Why? Why?
Because we're going to have to pay tipping fees at Johnston and transportation.
Can I have a motion on a budget?
I'll make the motion to approve account number 5500 rubbish and recycling collection. That total is $724,900.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Landfill operations, 53 5530.
Motion to approve landfill operations, line 5530, for $218,655.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 6-2. Motion carries. All right, this next one on the sheets, it's another XXX, but I believe the number is 5530, on-site wastewater treatment.
It's 553732.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion, we accept item 5530, 7732 in the amount of $30,000.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor? And opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item 5130, Building Maintenance Division. And this is a mix of personnel salary items as well as operational expenses.
I'll make a motion to approve account number 5130, Building Maintenance Division.
Nancy, did you have something to add to that?
That salary, there was an error in budgeting for that salary this year.
Was it?
Yeah, that shortchanged.
Yes, yes.
So that's the reason why,
Well, because that's why it's a little high. That's only two.
It's also two full-timers.
That's the custodian and the,
Because the actual really wasn't 84,346, that's what she's trying to say.
so I have a motion. Did you move that, Mike?
The account numbers are 5102, 5108, 5180, 6240, 6653, 6690, 6921, 7611. The total is $101,306.
Second?
Without any discussion, all in favor? And opposed?
Who did second?
I think Jay did. Did you second?
Yes, he did.
Okay, 8840. The parks maintenance mowing.
Can we, oh, this is just mowing, okay, never mind.
I'll make a motion to approve account number 8840, Parks Maintenance Mowing, account numbers 6459, 6630, and 6749 for the total of $40,200.
I'll second that.
Denise, can you tell me what the preventative maintenance is on that account? What that's for?
That's
that's for the
7,500.
fields.
Yeah, that's for the fields, right? That's for the fields.
To do what?
Rehabilitation and preventive maintenance. That's, I believe, we pay that to McGee and stuff to put the lime and all that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Isn't it like
Roll it, what do you call it?
Well, it maybe
Roll the lawn.
replace the infields if they need more dirt and sand.
Is it also go for like the grass, like to treat the grass, grub treat that type of thing?
she
Yeah, any of that stuff.
Yes. It's to keep it up to where it is,
Okay, thank you.
so that it doesn't deteriorate.
This has nothing to do with,
Roll it, lime
I don't think you'll find grass mowing in DPW.
it. That, it may go some to McGee because they do a treatment on it. I remember approving some bids that went to, something puts on in the winter and.
Yeah, we had a big
Yeah.
presentation on this last year.
Well, I guess I want to ask this another way. Next week, we're going to visit Parks and Recreation, and we may very well look at it and say, oh crap. So does voting on this now affect that?
I don't think so.
Brendan said we could go back, too.
Yeah, we can revisit it too if we need to, but, I mean, unless we want.
So this is really just maintenance of fields and dirt and mowing.
Yeah,
Weed treatments and all that stuff.
It's $60 more than last year.
I'm not worried about the cost. I just, if we go and visit playgrounds and the like and say, this place needs a lot of work and we got to give them some money to do it.
We can come back to that.
Okay.
We can always revote it, right?
Somebody that approved.
Yeah, we can just vote to amend it, right?
Right. If we, after a visit, we want to go up or down, those that vote for it could reopen it. So was there a, is that what you?
It was, we were in discussion.
Okay. All right, all in favor? I'm
Can I
sorry,
ask
go
a
ahead.
quick
Jen.
question before we vote? So this is maintenance and mowing, but does that cover like equipment on the fields, like playground equipment, anything with that?
Apparently not.
Where would that,
Playground stuff, any of that stuff.
where is that, where, is there even a line item for that?
No, Recreation came before the council, they were, because they have, that's one of the reasons I was suggested to these fields be visited. But they have problems with some of the playground equipment up here, that some of it may not be safe, they're gonna have to remove, they'll have to remove it. And they were talking about doing some fundraising and a better plan for.
And grants also.
And there's grants for things like that as well.
Yeah, I think is.
Grants, yeah, that's good.
Okay, thanks. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay, and then we'll have one abstain, so that's 7. Justin, did you want to vote, we're on parks and maintenance?
Yes or no?
The motion was for $40,200 for
$60 more than last year.
parks, maintenance, and mowing.
40,200?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'll do it. Yes.
All right. Then, so that would cover, we had a grand total for Public Works, we hit all of the individual items within that. So then we move to 6110, the Senior Citizen Service.
I would like to make a motion to approve 6110 Senior Citizen Service for a total of $121,686.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor? And opposed? Uh, 6200, the Economic Development Commission.
I'll move that at $0.
Second.
This one was
That was for economic development, that was, they wanted $300 for supplies, and they wanted to do a little brochure or pamphlet to get out onto them, kind of entice business.
Do they,
There wasn't budget in the last few years because that commission was really not functional. And, so they've just, in the last 6 or 7 months, got an active committee back together. And so they're trying to do some work. They also have requested, but it's not in here, some $1,000 towards the state. So what's that?
Brochure, who does that go to?
for different locations, they'll put them in, to kind of showcase what we've got for business and kind of entice some business. I think, Jan, did you go to their meeting? Did I see you at their meeting? No, oh, I'm sorry. But yes, that's what they want.
So this has nothing to do with Discover Newport by chance, like
No,
anything like
that's
that? So it's
nothing
not
to do
tourism
with-
related, it's business
Within
related?
Tiverton, yes. We want to kind of showcase like maybe some businesses up there. Just do a little brochure.
So I guess I'm sorry to ask this, but, so they do the brochure and they put it where they put it, but they don't have a website, like, where does it, like, how does it help
They do,
us?
they have the town's website.
Because that was their,
And because they're gonna use the town
The town's
website,
website.
we don't, totally different what happened there. And the $300 in supplies that was going to be used towards mailing and printing and things like that.
Is this also for marketing of the industrial park?
Yes. Well, it'll help market the industrial park.
Includes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? So we have a motion on the floor for 0 seconds. All in favor? 2, all opposed? The motion fails.
I'd like to make a motion for account number 6200 for Economic Development Commission for the $800 to approve.
I'll second. All right. All in favor? Opposed? That carries 6-2. Okay. Boards and commissions.
Because this was the same as last year, I'm going to make a motion for account number 6210, boards and commissions. Account number is 8,000, 8,010, 8,015, 8,020, 8,025, 8,030, 8,035, 8,040, 8,045. The total of $13,500. Make a motion to approve.
One second. Any discussion? All in favor? And opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we move into the top of page 13. We have account number 6250, the civic appropriations.
I'd like to move 6250 at $0.
Second.
Any discussion?
It's been mentioned in the past already that some people, including people who came to speak to the Budget Committee, were just in favor of people giving charity on their own individually, rather than the government telling them, this group, this group, this group. That was what we've been hearing, but as the rationale. But
I don't agree with that. These are not just charities where you just dump your money into it. These are services that are helping people in our community, your neighbors, our neighbors, and I think that we need to support them.
I agree on the need to support. I support charities myself. That's what charity should be for. People who agree that things should be done. I probably give, well, I don't know about these organizations in particular, but when I give to a charity, I give much more than my tax share of these amounts. I think that's how the principle that ought to be upheld.
And we have done research where we know that some of these organizations have way more than they have millions of dollars and are paid. Some of the highest officers in these organizations paid very highly. And I'm also of the mind that in town, it's just, it would be better if we just, in my opinion, that if we could just not have taxes go so high that people can't buy food or what, these basic necessities. I've seen, you know, the utility bills not be able to be paid. Here we're seeing food not be able to be purchased for their children, for their families, for the elderly. It just seems that that would be a better way to go, and they would feel better about themselves also. That's my opinion.
Ruth, I have a question on that. You want to take essentially $5,500 away from East Bay Community Action, which includes food for those same people you just mentioned.
No, yeah, my thought is that we can watch the taxes, and then people won't need to go there to get the food. That's just my logic. It doesn't mean they're, and also, by the way, if we take this away, they'll still be able to go there and get the food. That's for sure. But it's just that I know, I've heard a lot of things in town about people in town who don't want to admit that they want to go there. They don't feel good about it, you know. It's a feeling that I feel like it's better to be self-sufficient in some ways. That's just my take on it. So I'm not pushing this, that's all I'm saying, yeah.
I'd like to say that I know people have a view, and everyone's entitled to their view, so I'd like to say let's agree to disagree, and let's vote on this, please.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for zero funding for the 6250 civic appropriations. All in favor?
Oh, sorry,
Yeah, zero.
oh, I'm sorry, zero, this is zero, sorry. I'm going to vote for
And
it.
all opposed?
I need to abstain.
So the motion fails.
It's 1 to 6.
3
It's 1 to 6 to 1.
Point of order. May I ask why you're abstaining?
Because I am actually the coordinator for the fire rescue community training, so I cannot vote on that.
So, this isn't anything I'd be inclined to take action on, but I think the rules on that are that you would have to not participate in a conversation at all if you have a conflict of interest. I'm just saying, and for future reference,
I retract everything I said. Sorry, Ruth.
I've already forgotten it, so it's,
No, it's okay.
Gotcha. But yeah, no, I abstain.
That's true, you can't.
yeah, if you have some conflict, you have, I mean, technically, I think you're supposed to fill out a form and walk away from the table.
Really?
Yeah, so, but it's not sufficient to, at the end, just, you know, participate in a conversation and then, but,
I didn't mention that one.
yeah, not a big deal here, I'm just saying, just for information for folks.
Yeah, just for future reference.
You know, if you talk about
Okay,
that.
the motion failed.
I'd like to make a motion for account number 6250, civic appropriations. To shorten it up, it's account number 7750 through 7775. The total asked is $14,150, and make a motion to approve.
And I will second.
All in favor? Say opposed? So it's 6-1. The motion carries. All right, we had discussed we'll defer the discussion vote on the library. So we head down, middle of the page, 8790 to the beaches. So the salaries and expenses.
Oh, I'd like to make a motion on 8790 beaches to approve $25,500.
I will second that.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? And opposed? Motion carries. And then account number 8330, excuse me, 8830, summer recreation.
Make a motion to approve account number 8830, summer recreation. Accounts number 5114, 5181, 6629, 6690, 7470. Total being asked is $29,000, and make a motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm looking at line item 5114. Did we add, just refresh my memory, did we add another rec director?
No, his salary
salary went up?
yes. Which he still, in my opinion, is very underpaid.
Can't keep anyone down, because they come, they take that salary, stop for a year and say, yeah, you're not that. Because they work so hard.
For the whole, they do the summer rec?
So we haven't been able to keep anyone. The person who's doing this now is doing a really good job. And he's putting in a lot of hours.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on that. That further discussion, all in favor? And opposed? The motion carries. Okay, so that gets us through all of we've got a few of those biggies in terms of the school, library, and fire, as well as the municipal capital that we can hit next week. So with that, were there any, I know we've put on this and we continue this lightning fast pace, it'll come sooner than later, but is asking the committee to think again about the resolutions so that we have those ready to discuss in the coming meetings. Is there any correspondence that anyone wants to share?
So, just in point of information, so we're not going to do anything with revenue tonight?
I didn't even think about that. That certainly could be the will of the committee. We could approve the estimates on the revenue.
We have time, it's fine.
My mind tells me yes, my right hand is telling me no. Let's do it when my hand's hot.
Yeah,
I have a lot of writing.
we're still at,
Yeah.
what time are we at, 8:48? So if we can
Michael.
get through this, we might not have to
Michael,
do additional.
bring a laptop.
That's true.
Yeah, can we try to see if we can? My thought process would be to try to do some of
To do some of,
and then try to get through.
right. Any reason, what we have left, there may be other items that people have, other items that they want to bring up. We've got, you know, there's some minutes to go over, but I don't think we have a lot of business. So if the will of people is to discuss, vote on the revenue. Take a break?
Before we start moving.
Sure, yeah.
Do we?
Vote on that? Take a brief recess.